I was looking after my 10-year-old granddaughter the other day, and she was complaining that she was bored, and I heard myself saying, bored people make boring people. And as I said it, I was reminded of hearing my mum saying very similar words. Boring people are bored people, or bored people are boring people. And I suddenly thought, why am I saying that? Because actually, do you know what? I don't think I ever allow myself to get bored. And I did realise quite recently that now that I'm not working, because I haven't been working since the beginning of this year when I retired, I never allow myself to get bored. But one of my biggest worries when I retired was that I would be bored, and as somebody with ADHD, boredom is horrific for us. Our brains don't really do boredom. I don't really get bored. But since I've retired and I've had more time on my hands to do nothing, I've realised that actually I kind of like being bored. If I allow myself to be bored, when I am bored, it gives my brain a bit of space to think a little bit more clearly about things. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. And I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday about this, about boredom. And she said, oh God, I never get bored. Never get bored. If I feel like I might get bored, I read a book, or I go on Instagram and I scroll through Instagram or whatever. And I was thinking about this last night, and I thought, that's not the same thing. Not allowing yourself to get bored is not the same as not getting bored. It's just that we don't allow it. We fill that boredom space with something, probably something that is easy, something that's going to give us a bit of a dopamine hit, but we don't allow ourselves very often to get bored. And the more I thought about this overnight, which is why I wanted to make this video, the more I wanted to question, what's so wrong with being bored? Why is boredom seen as something that we shouldn't feel? Why are we told, like my mother used to tell me, and that I guiltily told my granddaughter, that bored people are boring people? No, no, I don't think that's true anymore. I think it's okay to let yourself be bored. I think that's what I mean. It could just be that I'm getting better at switching off and relaxing. When I was working, and especially when I had my business, my brain was never allowed to stop. I don't think having an ADHD brain makes it easy to switch off what's going on in there anyway. I think we are pre-wired to have a busy brain. But it's like, there's no science in this. This is just me trying to think things through. It's almost like we fill the gap with mindless stuff, rather than having that sense of nothingness that we have to fill with something that might go a bit deeper than we want to go. I hope that made sense. Anyway, what I was kind of thinking was, I'm starting to really enjoy moments where I switch off, and I've never been able to do it before, ever. Certainly when I was working, I couldn't do it. I mean, can you imagine? I'm trying to think of a job that I've ever had where it would have been okay, or seen as okay, for me to sit and do nothing deliberately. To be able to say, look, I'm not doing anything. I'm allowing my brain to get bored because I want to be able to think things through more deeply. I can't imagine any of my jobs, my boss being happy if I'd said, I'm just going to do nothing and like empty my brain if I can. And yet, What I'm finding now is when I allow myself to not fill the boredom gaps with stuff, it's like I'm able to kind of think a little bit more clearly about things that maybe have been playing on my mind, or I have ideas and I feel like I'm able to be a bit more creative. I think of things, I guess, that I probably wasn't allowing my brain to think about. And this has been really noticeable when I've been away in our camper van, which I'm sat in now, because sometimes when we're away, we don't have the best access to the internet, and I don't have loads of things around me that I would have in the house to be able to jump on to fill my time. Yes, I've sometimes got a book. I've normally got a book with me so I can read. But there are times when I'm in the van, when I don't choose to do anything at all, and I'll just sit and just be in the van. And I feel as if I've become more able to just sit comfortably with being bored. But I've been doing a little bit of reading this morning about what is boredom. And by definition, boredom isn't necessarily doing nothing. It's more feeling a sense of feeling uncomfortable about the things you have to do. So, you might be putting off a boring task, or a boring task might feel uncomfortable, or it might... Have you heard that? That's my husband coming out through the gate, so the gate's probably going to bang in a minute. It's that sense of being uncomfortable with the thing we're doing, or with not doing something. And I'm not sure then, by definition, that's what I'm feeling. I'm wondering if I'm just feeling more comfortable doing nothing, if I'm feeling more comfortable allowing that space that I've never really allowed before. Partly because I think when you do nothing, it's easy to feel guilty that you should be doing something. Going back to the whole work example before, if you sat in work appearing to do nothing, you would be thought of as lazy, or not pulling your weight, or what you get what I mean. Whereas I think sometimes it's good to do nothing. The Dutch have a word for it. They call it Niksen, and it's the concept or the practice of doing nothing on purpose, choosing to deliberately do nothing. I suppose it would be lovely to say, and I've got so good at this, now I schedule in Niksen time. No, I don't. I'm not that organised. But I'm definitely finding that there are times when I just don't want to have anything going on. When I think about the past, if there was a quiet moment, I'd fill it. I'd put on a podcast, I'd put on music, I'd put on a YouTube video, I'd have the television playing in the background, not all at once, but I'd have something going on to fill the silence. I would pick up the old phone and I would mindlessly scroll through any junk, really, just to fill the gap, to fill the silence, to give me some sort of stimulus for my brain. And I don't know whether, since I've stopped working and I've started to really work hard to get rid of the guilt of not doing anything, which is kind of instilled in us. I don't know if it's instilled in women more than men. I doubt it is, really. I think it's something that's just instilled in us in general. Must be busy, must be productive, must be achieving something, must end the day feeling like you've, done something worthwhile. But what if actually doing nothing was worthwhile? What if doing nothing and not filling that silence and not filling that gap actually made space for better things. It's really interesting as well. So I've been doing a bit of research, just I say a bit of research, I've been Googling a bit of stuff, a few rattles in here, and I was wondering what the science was, if there was any studies or anything done about boredom, and there's been some really interesting ones. One of the studies, I don't know what it is, I haven't got it written in front of me, but they put people in a room, and they were in a room with nothing, no stimulus at all, and there was a buzzer, and if they touched the buzzer they got an electric shock. And before going into the experiment, the majority of people said, you know, they turned down huge sums of money rather than press the button and give themselves an electric shock. Anyway, turns out when they were actually put in this room and left in there with no stimulus at all, I think it was 25% of the women pushed the buzzer and gave themselves an electric shock rather than just be bored. And then for men, I can't remember the exact number, it was something like 60% of men pressed the buzzer. They would rather give themselves an electric shock than be bored. Very weird. But then another study, they wanted to see if people were more creative if they were bored or if they were less creative if they were bored. So they gave one group, they had a control group, and then they had another group, and the control group were asked to, let me see if I can get this right, they were asked to come up with as many creative uses for, I think it was a plastic beaker, like a plastic coffee cup, I think, if I remember rightly, as many creative uses as they could. And the other group, the experimental group, were given a boring task to do before they were given the cup and asked to create, you know, give creative ideas. And I think it was something like copying numbers from the telephone directory, so a really boring task. And it turned out that the people who'd had the boring task beforehand came up with much more creative, not just more creative ideas as in number, but also more creative as in you know, innovative. So possibly the idea that boredom stimulates creativity is a really interesting idea, isn't it? And I felt that. I definitely think I felt this idea that when I give myself permission, I guess, to be bored and to not have to fill the gaps in my brain, my thoughts meander, and I just have this greater creative flow almost. It's quite interesting, especially for somebody with ADHD, I think. And it's got me wondering if, I don't know, if maybe for all my life I've suppressed some of that creativity by trying to plug the gap and not allow myself to be bored because of all of the, you know, the indoctrination of bored people are boring people. You know, that whole idea, that whole concept that there's something wrong with being bored. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Can you relate to this? Do you allow yourself to get bored? And if, like my friend who said, oh, I never get bored, I always find something to do. Are you the same? Is it that you don't get bored because you don't allow yourself the time to be bored? Or is it that you just don't relate to boredom at all? Or do you get bored? And if you do get bored, how do you deal with it? You know, are you comfortable with boredom, or does it irritate and does it make you uncomfortable? I'm really fascinated by all this. I don't know where the thoughts have come from. I don't know where this fascination with it has suddenly come from. There is another question I guess I wanted to kind of pose, which is boredom the same as relaxation? Is what I'm getting comfortable with now an ability to relax more easily and let my brain relax more easily, or is it boredom? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I certainly know that now I am far more comfortable with being able to do nothing, to not need to scroll on the phone, to not need to have the, you know, the noise in the background. But does that mean that I'm getting more comfortable with boredom? Because if boredom by definition means that it's a feeling of discomfort, then maybe it's not boredom that I'm getting comfortable with. Maybe it's more the ability to relax. I don't know, let me know in the comments. What are your thoughts? Do you have an answer for me? Do you know, can you clarify what it is I'm getting more comfortable with? Because I don't know, I just find this a really interesting conversation to have. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I have no idea how long this video has gone on for. I did have a vague plan of what I was going to say. I even had it all written out and I've ignored all of it. But there you go. If you have enjoyed it and you're new around here or you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favour, hit the subscribe button. I have neglected this channel just a little bit lately, and I do want to get back into producing some more videos, and if I get a few new subscribers, that would just boost my motivation, I guess, to do something. And hit the like button. That thumbs up button will make a huge difference. That would be absolutely brilliant, because that helps YouTube to realise that actually maybe you've enjoyed what I've been chatting about. And I will leave it there. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.